Hello everybody, I've got another good War Heroes video for you. We're going to be doing the last Native American war chief, and that is Joe Medicine Crow. Now, there's a good reason why there hasn't been any more war chiefs since he did it in World War II, and that's mainly because of the evolution of warfare. I'm going to tell you the 4 requirements really quick on how you accomplish this. So you have to touch a living enemy, you have to steal their weapon, you have to lead a war party. Now, all 3 of these are very much doable. You know, it's take a prisoner of war and disarm him, and then, you know, be like an officer of a squadron and command your fellow soldiers. The tricky part is the 4th requirement requires you to sneak and steal an enemy horse, and that's kind of why it's not doable anymore. Any modern conflicts that America is involved with, nobody's using horses anymore, you know, so you can't really accomplish this. But back in World War II, he had a little bit of luck on his side. But let's talk about Joe Medicine Crow himself first. So born 1913 on a Crow reservation in Montana, he would be brought up in the warrior's way. You know, you'd get the harsh training. You know, you'd be trained on how to live off the land, killing animals, and surviving the Montana winters and stuff. But you would also get the traditional Native American storytelling where you would learn about your ancestors and what they accomplished in their lifetimes. Like, he had grandparents that were well-known war heroes, one of them serving with General Custer in the American Civil War as a scout. So, like, he would get their sides of stories from wars in the past and how they themselves became war chiefs, and his ancestors that became war chiefs hundreds of years ago. He would be told those stories all the time, and it would make him curious, actually. So instead of just joining up into the military and being like, oh, I got to achieve this at some point, he would actually go on to college and would be the first person in the Crow nation to get a master's degree. He'd become a historian and an anthropologist, and this would kind of continue his curiosity of digging into his ancestors' past and learning more about his tribe and what they have accomplished. But that was in 1939, and as we all know, a lot of people would sign up for the army in World War II when it kicked off, and he was no exception. He was actually on his way to get a doctorate. He was about to be a doctor in history and anthropology, but decided to give up on it and join the fight in World War II, and would actually be a scout for the 103rd Infantry Division in 1943, and would be shipped over to France to help push Germany back. And he'd find his way into Germany in 1944. And towards the end of the war, it's kind of when he would start getting all of his requirements fulfilled. So, as part of the Crow traditions, he would paint 2 red war stripes on his arms, and would actually carry a yellow eagle feather that was given to him from the Sundance medicine man. It was just part of tradition. It was kind of like just the warrior's tradition for Crow, and would also be a thing for good luck out on the battlefield too. But back to those 4 requirements, as he would slowly fulfill them on his way into Germany with his infantry division. Now, while he was in a small French town and they were raiding it trying to clear out Germans, he would find himself in a one-on-one situation alone with a German soldier in an alleyway. He would take advantage of this opportunity, using his own firearm to knock a German weapon out of his hands, and then would take that German soldier prisoner. Now, in doing this, he's already done 2 of the requirements. He has now touched an enemy while he's alive because he took him prisoner, and he disarmed the enemy immediately. So, That's half the job done in just one day. But it wouldn't go over that simple going forward, because he'd have to wait a while for his next opportunity. Being a scout in an infantry division, you're never really going to command anybody. You know, you're kind of just working on your own with a few other people. But this opportunity would come up in the future, because his company would actually get surrounded by German soldiers. Now, in doing this, his commander would give him the ability to lead people to try to assist his company and get them out of this situation. So he would actually put Crow in charge of 6 other people, and their goal was to get supplies back to his company so that they could continue the fight and get out of the situation that they were in. And he would accomplish this. Him and 6 others would brave all the landmines, the constant enemy fire, and the overwhelming German soldiers that were bearing down on them at this point, to get supplies back to his company and get them the ammunition that they needed to continue the fight and to push the Germans away from them. So in doing this, he has now led an official war party, and maybe a small one, but it still counted towards the requirements that he needed. So now he's got 3 done. But it wouldn't really come until close to the end of the war that he'd be able to get that 4th requirement. So it really looked like he would not get any of the requirements fully complete that he needed to, and this would cause him to not get his war chief status. Now, it has to be a horse, and we will talk about that in the future. But thanks to the limited resources of Germany, because as the war went on, they lost territory, they lost ways of getting supplies. Oil kind of became scarce for Germany and its nice oiled up machines that it would use for its quick warfare. This means that they still had to rely on horses to drag around some of the artillery pieces that they used in the war. So you could still find horses, it was just kind of a rarity, because Germany wanted to be fully mechanized but couldn't accomplish it completely. But during a hasty retreat, Joe noticed that some SS soldiers were actually retreating on horseback. So he would use his scouting training that he had gotten from the Crow and the military to track these horses down using the tracks and of course the loud clapping of horse hooves as they would hastily retreat back, and they would be found in a barn. Now, before the infantry were given the order to fire upon this barn that they knew the German SS soldiers were in, Joe had to actually convince his commander to let him sneak into the barn and take the horses. Now, he would not go up to his commander and be like, hey, I really need this. This is my last requirement to be a war chief. No, he wanted it to make sense to his commander. So he's like, hey, let me go in there. Let me free all the horses and take one and lead the horses out of the barn. By doing so, these SS soldiers can't escape your gunfire. So you guys can just mow them down and shoot at that barn until they're gone. And that's what he would do. The commander would let him sneak into the barn, free all the horses. All the horses would charge out of the front entrance of that barn, and the infantry soldiers would fire into the barn and handle the Germans, all while he rode off on his horse singing traditional Crow songs and celebrating that he had now gotten all 4 requirements done to be considered a war chief. And now, by the time the war had ended, he would earn the Bronze Star and the French Legion of Honor, and he would continue to become a Crow historian, to teach future generations about Crow history and heritage, and tell all the stories of his grandparents and his ancestors before him. Now, because of all the stories that his grandparents would tell him of their time in like the American Civil War and stuff, he would actually be using his stories to write out the reenactments for battles like Little Bighorn that are still used today because of their accuracy from the stories he was told. Now, remember, I told you it had to be a horse, because there has been attempts from people to try and become war chiefs even after World War II. His own nephew would have actually tried to do it in the Vietnam War, and he accomplished 3 out of the 4 tasks. The only thing he did not do was steal a horse. And that's because in Vietnam they didn't use horses, they actually used elephants. And he himself said that he captured 2 elephants from the Vietnamese. But the chiefs and the High Council of the Crow Nation would reject his application to be a war chief because they were not horses, they were elephants. Now, Joe himself would go on, and actually President Obama, or former President Obama, would give him a Medal of Freedom as well. But Joe would live a very long life and would pass away in 2016 at the age of 102. And for the foreseeable future, will probably go down as the last war chief to ever achieve all 4 requirements to do so, considering that war keeps changing and technology keeps being introduced, and you're probably never going to see horses again used in warfare unless we have, a wild nuclear World War III that resets everything back to the Stone Age. But that's neither here nor there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story, and if you did, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what future stories I should look into, what people have maybe a badass story to tell that I would enjoy and that maybe you would enjoy as well. And I will see you guys in a future video. Peace.